Every parent I have ever worked with tells me the same thing about their toddler. He is an angel for the babysitter. And the second I walk through the door, he falls apart on the kitchen floor. Most parents think that means something is wrong. It means the opposite. That fall apart moment is the clearest signal a small child can send you, and almost nobody reads it right. So what is your toddler actually telling you when they save their worst behavior only for you? My name is Walter Combs. For 22 years, I worked inside pediatric offices. First as an intake coordinator, later running parent education sessions in the waiting room, while families sat for their well visits. I have watched somewhere north of 10,000 toddlers walk through those doors with their parents. I am not a doctor, I never claimed to be. But I sat in the room while doctors explained things to scared, tired parents, over and over, the same handful of truths, year after year. And most of those truths never make it past the exam room door. I am going to hand you 7 of them today. Here is where I went wrong myself, 20 years ago, with my own daughter, before I understood any of this. She would be sweet as pie all day at daycare. The teachers loved her. They used words like easy and delightful. Then I would show up at pickup, and by the time we hit the car, she was screaming about the wrong color cup, the wrong shoe, the wrong everything. I remember sitting in that parking lot thinking, what am I doing wrong? I felt like a failure before I even got the car in reverse. I would call my sister on the drive home and tell her I must be doing something the teachers were not, because how else could the same child be an angel for 8 hours and a tornado for 8 minutes? I asked one of the pediatricians I worked with about it the next week, half embarrassed to even bring it up in the hallway between patients. And what she told me changed how I saw my daughter completely. She said, Walter, that is not a discipline problem. That is a compliment. And it is the single most misunderstood compliment in parenting. Your daughter is telling you that you are the only person in her whole day she trusts enough to fall apart in front of. I did not believe her at first. It sounded too easy, too convenient, like something you would say to make a tired parent feel better. But I started watching for it in every family that came through those doors after that. Not just my daughter, hundreds of them, then thousands. I watched toddlers who were dry-eyed and cooperative, with a nurse taking their temperature, then screaming and clinging the second their mother walked back into the room. I watched preschoolers who sat still for the doctor and turned into a puddle on the floor the moment Dad picked them up from the waiting room chair. 22 years later, across every family I ever worked with, I have never once seen it fail. The children who save their worst moments for one specific adult are not broken. They are bonded. And once you know what to look for, you will start seeing it everywhere in your own house. Usually in the exact moments that used to make you feel like the worst parent alive. Quick word before I go further. The old methods my family uses, there is more of it than fits in any one video. I gathered the whole of it into a book you can buy in our pinned comment below. The book is the long version. If you want it, it is there. I will not mention it again. So let me ask you something. Does your toddler behave better for grandma than for you? Better for the daycare teacher than for you? Better for the neighbor watching him for 20 minutes than for you, the person who feeds him, bathes him, and reads him 3 books every single night before bed? If the answer is yes, stay with me, because I am about to show you the 7 things your toddler only does around the person they trust the most, and why every single one of them is proof you are doing this right, not proof you are doing it wrong. I want to be honest with you about something before we go further. I am not a pediatrician, and I am never going to pretend to be one. What I am is someone who spent 2 decades sitting a few feet away from the exam table while pediatricians explained these exact patterns to worried parents, over and over, in almost the same words every time. I took notes. I asked questions on my lunch break. I watched the same 7 signs show up in family after family, in every kind of household, in every kind of toddler, from the quiet ones to the loud ones. What I am handing you today is not a theory I came up with. It is the pattern I watched repeat itself for 22 years, translated out of clinic language and into the words you would use talking to a friend over the fence. Here is what most parents get backward. We are taught, most of us, without anyone ever saying it out loud, that a well-behaved child is a well-loved child. So when our toddler is calm and sweet everywhere else and falls apart only with us, we assume we are the problem. We think we must be doing something the sitter is not. We start comparing ourselves. We start doubting the bond. That is exactly backward, and here is the plain truth behind it. A small child has only so much self-control in a day. Holding it together, minding your manners, following rules, keeping your face calm when you are tired or hungry or overwhelmed, that takes real effort, even for a 2-year-old. Think of it like a jar that fills up over the course of the day. Every polite moment, every held-in whine, every swallowed complaint at daycare adds one more drop to that jar. By the time you walk in the door, the jar is full. It has to go somewhere, and it only empties out around the person a child trusts enough to catch it. Every child spends that effort on the people they are not fully sure of yet. The daycare teacher, the babysitter, even a grandparent, they only see twice a month. Around those people, a toddler is still doing a little bit of work, still reading the room, still holding the line. But around the one person they trust completely, the work stops, the mask comes off. All that held back feeling comes pouring out right there in the kitchen, right there in the car, right there at bedtime. Child development researchers have a name for this. They call the primary attachment figure the safe base, a term that goes back to attachment studies from the middle of the last century, and it still holds up in every clinic I ever worked in. The safe base is not the person a toddler behaves best for, it is the person a toddler feels safest falling apart in front of. Most parenting advice sold to you in bookstores and parenting classes skips right past this and goes straight to behavior charts and sticker systems, ways to make the meltdown stop faster. That is treating the symptom, not understanding the cause. You do not need a class, you do not need a chart, you need one flipped idea, and it costs nothing. Good behavior everywhere else is not proof of a stronger bond with that other person. It is proof of a weaker one. The meltdown at home with you is the strongest compliment a 2-year-old knows how to give, and they cannot even tell you that because they do not have the words yet. You are simply the place where it is safe to stop performing. Once you understand that one idea, you start noticing 6 more signs, all growing out of that same root. Let me walk you through each one, the way I used to walk parents through them in that waiting room, one at a time, so you can watch for them in your own house this week. The first one is the meltdown paradox, which we already covered, the worst behavior saved for the safest person. Watch for it tonight at dinner. If your toddler whines about the food, throws the spoon, or cries about nothing in particular and does none of that at grandma's table, that is not a bad night. That is trust, showing up loud. The next time it happens, do not ask yourself what you did wrong that day. Ask yourself who else in his world got the calm version of him, and be glad you got the real one. The second sign is what child psychologists call checking back, though I always just called it the over-the-shoulder glance. Watch your toddler at the park. He runs toward a new slide, a strange dog, a group of bigger kids, and right before he commits, he stops and looks back at you, just for a second. He is not asking permission, he is reading your face like a weather report. If you look calm, he goes. If you look worried, he freezes. A toddler will do this dozens of times a day with the person they trust, and almost never with a stranger holding them, because checking back only works if you trust what you will find when you look. I used to tell parents in the waiting room, your face is doing more parenting in that half second than any sentence you could say. Keep it steady, even when your stomach is not. And watch how much braver he gets by the end of the week. The third sign is what I call refueling, and it is one of my favorites to watch. Your toddler wanders off to explore, gets absorbed in something across the room, and then out of nowhere comes running back to touch your leg, climb into your lap for 10 seconds, or just lean against your knee. Then, he is gone again. Back to playing. He is not hurt. He is not scared. He is simply topping off the tank. Children only refuel off the person they consider their base. Watch a toddler at a birthday party sometime. He will refuel off his mother a dozen times in an hour and never once touch the host. Count it next time you are somewhere crowded. That number is not a coincidence. It is a map of exactly who he trusts, drawn in footsteps. The fourth sign is saving the complaints. This one trips parents up constantly. Your toddler will eat vegetables without a fight at preschool and refuse the exact same vegetable at your table an hour later. He will nap fine for the sitter and fight sleep with everything he has when it is you tucking him in. This is not manipulation. A 2-year-old does not have the wiring for that yet. Not really. Not in the scheming sense adults imagine. It is simply that complaining, whining, and pushing back costs social energy, and he only spends that energy where he knows the relationship can absorb it. A daycare teacher is one of 15 kids in a room. Your toddler senses, correctly, that she has less room to hold his hardest moments. You have all the room in the world, and somewhere underneath the tantrum, he knows it. The fifth sign is quiet copying, and you have to slow down to catch it. Watch for your toddler humming a tune, only you hum, using a hand gesture you use without thinking, or repeating a phrase in your exact tone of voice, right down to the sigh at the end of it. Children mirror the person they are most attached to far more than they mirror anyone else, and they do it completely without meaning to. It is one of the surest signs of a deep bond, and most parents never notice it happening in real time because it never announces itself. It just quietly shows up in your kitchen one afternoon, wearing your face. The sixth sign is the instant sleep drop. Pick up a sleepy toddler who trusts you completely, and watch what happens to his body. It goes heavy. Truly heavy, like dead weight, within seconds. His head rolls into your shoulder, his fists uncurl, his whole frame just lets go. That full body collapse only happens with a person a child feels completely safe, releasing control around. With someone less familiar, even a loving grandparent, a tired toddler will often stay a little stiff, a little braced, even half asleep, holding just enough tension to keep one foot in the world. You will only ever feel the full, boneless version of that collapse from a child who has decided, somewhere below words, that you have him. The seventh sign is the hardest one for parents to hear, and it is boundary testing. Your toddler will push every limit with you specifically. He will ask for the cookie 4 times after you have already said no. He will test whether bedtime really means bedtime, whether no really means no, whether you will hold the line when he cries about it. He almost never does this with a stranger or a rarely seen relative, because testing a boundary requires trusting that the relationship will survive you saying no. A toddler who never tests you is not a well-behaved toddler. He is a toddler who is not yet sure the bond can take it. I used to remind exhausted parents of this in the waiting room, right before their name got called. The child who fights you on bedtime every night is running an experiment, over and over, to see if the answer changes. Hold the line calmly enough times, and the testing does not mean you have failed. It means the experiment keeps coming back with the same result, and that result is you. Here is the bigger picture I want to leave you with. The same thing that Pediatrician told me in that hallway 20 years ago. The relationship that looks the hardest from the outside, the one with the tantrums and the whining and the 4 times asking, is very often the strongest one your child has. The easy, agreeable child at daycare is not necessarily the more secure child. He may simply be the more cautious one, still deciding whether that room is safe. Your kitchen floor meltdown is not a parenting failure. It is your 2-year-old telling you, in the only language he has, that you are home. I think about all those years in that pediatric office, and the parents I remember best are not the ones with the calmest kids in the waiting room. They are the ones who came in exhausted, apologizing for the crying before they had even sat down. Sure, they were somehow failing. I wish I could go back and tell every one of them what took me too long to learn with my own daughter. The exhaustion you feel some evenings is not a sign that something is wrong between you and your child. Often it is the plainest evidence that something is going very right. Children do not hand that kind of trust to just anyone. They hand it to the person who shows up again and again, on the good nights and the hard ones, and never once stops being the safe place to land. That is not a small thing. That is the whole job. And if your toddler is falling apart in your kitchen tonight, he already believes you are doing it. Tonight, when your toddler falls apart over something small, right after you walk through the door, try saying this instead of what you usually say. Say, I am so glad you feel safe enough with me to show me how you really feel. You do not have to fix the meltdown in that moment. You do not need a script, and you do not need to get it perfect. You just have to recognize what it means and let that steady you while the storm passes through. Tell me in the comments which one of these 7 you saw in your own house this week. I read every comment, and I answer as many as I can between families, old habit. Next time, I am going to show you the one thing pediatricians say you should never do in the middle of a toddler tantrum. A mistake almost every well-meaning parent makes without realizing it. Because it feels like the right thing to do in the moment, and it is doing the opposite. I will walk you through exactly what to say instead, word for word. The same phrasing I watched calm down hundreds of meltdowns in that waiting room, and why the timing of when you say it matters just as much as the words themselves. Until then, take it easy on yourself tonight. The hardest moment of your day is very likely the proudest one your toddler has, even if neither of you has the words for it yet. That is not a small thing to carry home with you, and it is not something a sticker chart could ever teach you. It took me a hallway conversation and a parking lot full of guilt to learn it. You just needed a video. Final word count, 2975.